Well, I'm trying to find reasons to like her better than Condoleezza Rice, but I haven't come up with any yet.
Well,
I'll let you know if I find some.
That's true. It's hard to make those choices.
Well, now, on the Iraq thing, basically what you're saying, I think if I can boil it down, the difference between Barack Obama's Iraq withdrawal policy and the policy that you would have had you been the president is that he's accepted basically the Bush premise that we have to win. We can't leave if there's a problem behind. We have to be able to say the surge worked all the way up until the last troop leaves from Kuwait and maybe for a few months after that. Whereas your position is we're leaving. And if the Sunnis and the Shiites go back to war, we need to recognize that as a consequence of our invasion in the first place, and we just got to go. But that, I guess you're saying under the way it is in the Obama administration, as long as there's violence there, we're never leaving.
Yeah, and I think his definition of leaving is different than my definition. My definition is leaving, and that is not having military personnel there, turning the bases over to whatever government is there. Matter of fact, I would even, because symbolically it's so bad, I would not get involved in that embassy because I think that is a real affront. We could have a small office over there. That ought to be turned over to the Red Cross or something like that. But I would start leaving. I don't know why physically you couldn't accomplish that in 6 months. And who knows, maybe it could be very violent, and that wouldn't surprise anybody. But who knows, it might be a lot less violence than we've seen in the last 5 years. A lot of people have been killed and a lot of people displaced. But I think there would be a struggle for the balance of power. But, maybe there would be a continuation of the northern part for Kurdistan where that would be maintained, and who knows what would happen in the south. But all I know is that this is not going to last. There's just too many reasons for these people to get fighting and killing each other again.
And on the larger issue of the cost of empire, as you were discussing with Hillary Clinton, and of course I'm madly refreshing Lou Rockwell's blog here looking for the YouTube, but as far as the cost of all that, you mentioned the kind of outrage over the so-called or I don't know if you mentioned outrage. You mentioned the increase in the budget. I'm going to mention the outrage that when they called this a cut, when they increased the defense budget by 9%, they said a few weeks ago. And on the right wing, this was denounced as a cut, as apparently they're shuffling some budget items around inside the Pentagon. But I guess I'd just like to give you an opportunity to really drive home to people the cost of maintaining a world empire and maybe like where on the balance sheet are we in the sense of, how much money we make off of empire and how much better off we might be without one.
Yeah, the special interests are still in charge, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, and the bottom line is the increase in the amount. And then, of course, he severely criticized going back with these supplementals. Now, he did put 130 in the budget, which is different. That's for next year. But this year, he's continuing the policy, although his argument there is, well, this year is still Bush's year, so we have to continue the maintenance. But even though he won the votes of those who wanted to end the vote and bring troops home and have a different foreign policy, out of fairness to Obama, he was pretty truthful about Afghanistan. Remember, during the campaign, he actually came across sometimes more hawkish than even McCain did. McCain had to say, yeah, me too, I'm for that. But Obama was the first one to start talking about expanding the war in Afghanistan, which makes no sense whatsoever. But no, they shift things around. They'll cut one program and save a couple $1 million, but then they'll give billions more to something else. So I'll bet you most of the people in this country believe he has cut military spending, which is not true. And this is one advantage I have on the committee as being a Republican, is that I can criticize the administration for foreign policy where they haven't done what they said. But even the Democrats don't want to criticize her, for a couple reasons. First, Israel, and the second reason is they don't want to offend their president. They want to be unified, just like so many Republicans didn't want to offend Bush. They figured, well, he used to be conservative, but we don't want to take him on. We don't want to fight him, so they went and voted with him all the time. The Democrats are doing a bit of that, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now as they spend us into bankruptcy, it seems like everybody forgets all the stimulus and all the war spending from the last 8 years. And now stimulus and war spending apparently is the solution to our crisis. And honestly, well, as I guess I spend most of my time paying attention to all this foreign policy stuff, and I can't really keep up with you Austrian economics about all the developments in the financial crisis. But at least a few times in reading and watching the coverage of the financial crisis on TV, I'm reminded of Garrett Garrett's book, The People's Pottage, where he talked about the 1930s and what he called the revolution within the form, where they didn't really throw the Constitution out. They still kept it there in the window or what have you. But basically they changed the entire nature of the way the federal government interacts with this society. You know, the revolutionaries weren't on the outside of the gates, he said. They were on the inside. And I just wonder whether you think that really compares to what's happening now with the power grabs by the Treasury Department, the executive branch. It's almost like after 9/11, it seems like, where they just sort of get carte blanche. And I wonder whether you think that to call what's happening now something akin to a revolution within the form is going too far, or if that is what you think is going on, can you kind of give us the basic outlines of what are the major changes that we're dealing with here that are going to bear consequences for us in the future?
Well, I think it is a continuation of that revolution that Garrett talked about, and even though it wasn't a steady progress, you know, what they were doing in the 30s, they backed off a little bit, especially after the war, but they never changed total policy. It just meant that they slowed it up a little bit. But right now, I think we're much further along. I think what he talked about is absolutely coming to bear, and it's a form of fascism, and there's less respect than ever for the law. There's no hint that they're ever going to return to sound money unless we do have some philosophic revolution to, offer our solutions to the problem. So hopefully we can do this, but I think their side is still winning. Like you say, you know, we got into this mess by spending and borrowing and printing money, and they think we can get out of this problem by just doing more of the same thing. It doesn't make any sense at all.
What changes have really happened? I mean, we already had a Federal Reserve and a SEC and a Treasury and Commerce departments and all these things. What's really changed other than the raw numbers of dollars that they've taken from us for all their various bailouts and so forth? I mean, is the structure of the government really different now? Or?
Yeah, I think there's been some major changes because they're getting much closer to control. There's ownership in banks and insurance companies. They own stock. It's much closer to a fascist system where there was a lot of benefits to big business, and there was a military-industrial complex and all of these things. Now it's much, much closer. They're deeply embedded together. So I think we've made a big step moving in the wrong direction, but I also think it's unstable and it will come to an end. The big question is what we're going to replace it with.
I know you're aware of the Red Cross report, the Office of Legal Counsel memos, and now this new report from the Armed Services Committee about the torture regime that ruled during the Bush-Cheney years. And I wonder if you're calling for, have you called for an independent investigation, special prosecutor, or congressional hearings, or anything along those lines? What do you think should be done, sir?
Well, I haven't been that specific, and I may well get that far because it's just been the last couple of days where I've been asked about this and whether or not I would support further investigation and prosecution of those who are guilty of those crimes, and I say absolutely yes. We impeached the president not too long ago for infractions that were less serious than some of these charges that have been, levied against our leaders of the last administration. So I think Obama is, very much involved in protecting state power and state secrecy. And his first announcement sounded pretty bland that he wasn't going to pursue it. Now he's saying at least he's going to look at those people who wrote up the legal documents. But the people who participated ought to be looked at. I mean, if you were an honest American trying to do your job in the CIA and you were asked to waterboard somebody a couple hundred times, you'd think, well, maybe this is torture. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. So I think everybody has responsibility, and I think they should be investigated and prosecuted if the evidence is there.
All right, everybody, that's Dr. Ron Paul, Congressman representing District 14 on Texas Gulf Coast, author of a great many books, including The Revolution, a Manifesto. Thanks very much for your time on the show today, sir.
Thank you very much.